Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Munro Chambers, an actor you may know from his roles on the TV series Degrassi The Next Generation and Second Gen, or from movies like Sadie's Last Days on Earth, Knuckleball, and Helmington. He turned up last month in Jovanka Vuccovic's Riot Girls, and he's currently starring in Rob Grant's Harpoon with Emily Tyra and Christopher Gray. They play three friends whose pleasure cruise turns into a very ugly and pretty funny struggle for survival. It's playing in Toronto at the Carlton Cinemas right now, and it went live on iTunes this very morning. It's really fun, in a gruesome way, and you should check it out. Munro picked Castaway, Robert Zemeckis' 2000 drama starring Tom Hanks as Chuck Noland, a FedEx employee who finds himself stranded on a tropical island after a plane crash, utterly alone and totally unprepared for the challenge. It's a survival story played for emotion rather than tension, and if you've seen the film, you know the real question on Zemeckis and Hanks' minds isn't whether Chuck will get off the island, but who he'll be when he does. Munro gets it. This is Someone Else's Movie. I'm assuming there's a kind of a weird connection to Harpoon, just in the isolation of it all, but what did make you pick Castaway?
Well, mainly is the isolation, but I was trying to think of something that it had a very, very minimal cast and had many genres in it. Mm-hmm. So, because Harpoon, when I first read the script, it had a little bit of comedy, a lot of horror, thriller aspects, some drama, some little bit of romance, a buddy comedy in the sense I was, there's weird inspirations that Rob had that made us laugh. Like, he kept referencing Seinfeld.
Okay.
Which was really, really funny. But when I thought of Castaway, that was the one thing that resonated with me because I grew up very fond of that era of film because I grew up in it, obviously.
Sure.
But Castaway, just specifically with Tom Hanks, he made such dramatic situations so funny and so real and charming that I thought, I was like, okay, that's very interesting. And there's a slight comparison there. Obviously, they're very, very different in their execution in the sense of what the end goal is. But I thought it was, I just love that movie in general.
Yeah, it's, I'm kind of surprised no one's brought it up before because it's one of those movies that it's like it had a moment, went away, and then never really went away because it was on cable constantly and you just, it's absorbed into everything. And when I heard you wanted to do it, I was like, oh, cool. I haven't thought about that. Like, it's never really gone away, but I hadn't thought about it in a really long time. And I went back, and it's a really solid movie. I'd forgotten just how good the filmmaking is. That thing that Zemeckis does with the camera work, that sort of portentous, serious, self-serious thing he does, it works here in a way that it didn't in his previous couple, like What Lies Beneath, or even Forrest Gump, which take or leave.
Yep.
And Contact, where the camera is always reminding you that you're watching a very important movie. And here, because there really is no story other than the moment-to-moment survival, like, it works. And it made me pay more attention to Hanks and just commit to the story so much more.
He started it off with the package, with the FedEx package. It's kind of like, this is going to be a fly on the wall film, and this is going to be something, just to hone in on and pay attention. But he does that with all of his films, even with Flight, everything has a connection, everything gets resolved in some way, shape, or form, and he uses dialogue very, very specifically. But no, I was very shocked when you said, like, one of the two. I was like, really? Because I put that as first because I was like, okay, that's the comparison I thought of. I think it'd be fun to, bounce in between them. But I thought for sure we're not going to be able to talk about it. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, no, that one's going to be gone because I was going through the seasons and I was listening to some of the previous episodes.
Oh, I see.
And I was like, oh no, it must be. It's probably in the earlier ones. I was looking through. I was like, oh no, it's definitely gone. But I'll put it in anyway.
Yeah, no, I always come back to the same thing. I try really hard not to direct people towards a choice when they offer multiples, and it's like, no, the one you feel most comfortable talking about for an hour. That's really the only thing. And sometimes it's like, I really hope he picks this one.
Yeah.
And other times it's just a total roll of the dice. So for the listener, what was the other film you were suggesting?
I was thinking of The Prestige.
Also an interesting call.
Just because I love that film.
Yeah.
I try to pick things that a couple of them were, certain performance base of inspiration and for the film. And then other ones that I just admire and that I've spent times talking about at length.
Right.
Especially because this is a podcast about talking about films.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what films to me are the most interesting filmmakers that I think inspire me, or filmmakers that I love to watch their films, and then let's just have at. And So right.
No, I was just going to say it's such a really interesting duality too to pick Zemeckis and Nolan because one of them is so obsessed with the tactile and the real and film versus digital, and then there's Zemeckis what was the span of time between Castaway and Flight? It was like 12,
it would be 14 years.
Yeah, and he did not make a physical feature between those two films. They were all digital. He was just playing with mocap and CG, and he almost did that hideous sounding Yellow Submarine where he was going to reanimate the Beatles digitally. And
I didn't see that.
He wanted to do a CG mocap version of Yellow Submarine, the movie, with actors. Peter Serafinowicz was going to play Paul, I think.
Okay.
But then just replace them in the volume, in the realm, with the recreations of the Beatles as they would have looked. So it's even more Beatle-y than the animated film, which uses caricatures. And it just sounded like the worst possible idea.
Yeah.
And
but it could have been the best.
I know. Well, that is how he put it. I asked him about it when he came through for Flight, and I was like, was that ever really going to work? And he said, we came so close. And of course, it's him telling me that, so I have no idea. Like,
I
three guys at Apple are like, no, we didn't.
No.
Yeah.
But I like that courage, though. I think there's so many things that are cookie cutter or safe, and I think going something unique or something a little outside of it that you're like, oh, that's probably not going to work, but it could.
Yeah.
And to see if that'll stick, I think that's awesome. That's something that in recent years, that's what I like when you're reading something and you're like, ooh, this is like when we did Turbo Kid, when I was reading it, it was like, this is wild. Easily the wildest script I've ever read. 50% of the gore was taken out while filming it, so you can imagine what it could have been.
That is a very enthusiastic film as it was shot, so okay.
Yes, but so we did that, and I was like, this is gonna be fun. If people are gonna get it, they're gonna get it, but if not, let's just see what happens. So I think that's really fun when you have a director, especially a director of his stature, a director who, has made these incredible dramatic films, and he's going, well, yeah, let's see. Let's roll the dice.
Castaway's a gamble too, right? Because if Hanks doesn't look right with a weight loss, they shut down the production for what, a year?
I use like 6 months to a year
to let him lose the weight, and he bulked up beforehand, right? So it was a whole other thing where he
gained 50 pounds.
Yeah, he said he just didn't exercise, and I think given that it's Tom Hanks, he turns everything into a bit of a joke anyway. Yeah. He said, I just didn't exercise, and then I didn't exercise and I only ate fish or something. Like he mimicked the diet, I think, that he would have eaten.
Okay.
Something similar to that anyway, to do the crash loss, to make sure he was still getting enough protein. He was eating a lot of fish, but it's so unhealthy. And it works. That's it, right? Like that jump cut is, and now I can imagine Zemeckis wanting to do it digitally, and other people have, but it is so shocking in the movie to go from that absolute low point of the dental surgery, which is something everybody can empathize with, even though we can't feel it, we feel it.
Yeah.
To go to that emaciation and the beard and the hair, and it's just like, it's daring, and I assume it was in the script the whole time that it was going to be that much of a shock, but to deliver it, to make it pay off, we need to care so much about this guy who we barely know.
Yeah.
Like we've spent, 40 minutes with him by that point, if that, maybe less?
Before the
transition, before the jump, yeah.
Yeah, it was 50 minutes.
Right.
Or something like that.
And to see him robbed of everything, like literally, he's almost naked, he's just completely without anything.
Yeah.
But himself.
But he's also gained so much, and that's the whole meaning of it, right? Like, you get to be stripped of everything to really appreciate and gain everything else. Like him running around the water, trying to throw the barely sharp stick into a fish, and
it's just not even a spear yet.
Yeah, it's literally just snapped with his leg, and let's see if it happens. And I remember I was rewatching it, and I was watching with my girlfriend, and that moment in the coconut where he's trying to hit it with a rock, and then my girlfriend literally out loud goes, "Try to cut into it," and then he goes, "Oh," and then that realization of like all that intelligence that he has at the beginning of the film and trying to control everything and thinking that he's smarter than everyone, and even like undermining Helen Hunt at the dinner table, being that the lawyer pre-law or whatever. I forget what the exact line is, but he's just undermining her ex-husband. All that was stripped away from him, and it was kind of like, no, he has to relearn everything, and it's such a great film to take yourself out of the stress of your actual life, and then let's see where you end up. I wouldn't the fact that the only time this man sobs is when his imaginary best friend is floating away is incredible. I'd be sobbing the first 10 minutes in. There's no way. So and I also thought that was an interesting play. I thought that took a lot of courage and a bold move for him to only show emotion, like that string of emotion.
Yeah, to an inanimate, non-receptive.
In a very, like, this part. And he picked his punches. The same thing with his anger and his frustration and his having everything around him be too much. He really picked his spots. And I think you could put many actors in it, and I think they'd flourish. But it takes a very specific actor to do that for 2.5. Well, I guess it would be for an hour and a half alone.
Yeah.
By himself and make it entertaining.
Yeah.
And that's the thing Tom Hanks brings every time.
I don't think he gets enough credit for the thing that he does, because our concept of stardom, right, like movie stars versus character actors, is that you want to see them do the same thing over and over again because that's how you like to imagine yourself, or they're avatars for us, or they're representational of some sort of desire that we all have to be famous, to be, whatever the Jimmy Stewart thing is that Tom Hanks is often credited with, right? Like, I just want to be his pal. I want him to be my pal. I just want to hang out with this guy.
That charm, yeah.
Yeah. But what Hanks does, and he does it in almost every appearance, like even on talk shows, is he tells you that it's okay to invest in him somehow. Like there's an easiness, there's an approach, even when he's playing people with, sort of twitchy OCD tendencies or off-putting things. That are the exceptions I would make, or maybe Road to Perdition and The Lady Killers, where he's playing a bad guy that's the one time he's unconvincing because he has this warmth that doesn't go away.
Yes.
And even Road to Perdition sort of makes it okay for him to kill people because he's doing it in the service of his family, but he still, it reads as unconvincing when he does that. And then when you see him play a person who is just middle of everything, I guess, like not middle class, not middle aged, but he's just everyman-y enough to be an everyman.
Yep.
To have just wandered in from off stage, and here he is in this movie, and we're going to follow him for a while. Like that's the most amazing thing of his, that talent to just not to disappear, but to be Tom Hanks in the middle of this thing and have that quality of his. And I met him once on the Forrest Gump junket, and he's exactly who you want him to be, which is, this is 25 years ago, but he was utterly comfortable with the idea that people think he's famous and just also not believing it himself. Like he really just didn't seem fazed at the time. And this is just after he'd won the Oscar for Philadelphia.
See, that blows my mind. It's so nice to hear that about actors like that who you grew up idolizing. Mm-hmm. And you just don't know, right? Like you don't know if they're going to be like the people in the films, like you said. But I think what he has there is, even though he doesn't believe it or he has that little undermining, he has full confidence in himself.
Oh, I think so.
And I think that's what makes, there's certain actors who have a great ability to perform. They have a great ability to create character and to transform and to understand a full arc of a script and how to pick their punch and do that. But those amazing actors who are just confident, just them, and then they're able to tweak their emotions based on the character are incredible. Like when he plays, like, can you keep going, Castaway, when he's slowly losing his mind and he's talking to Wilson in the cave, at not one point are you afraid of him because he's losing his mind.
Yeah.
And he breaks the stereotype of how I believe a lesser actor would have approached it. They would have approached that scene a very, very specific way, which could have been a stereotype for someone losing their mind. He made it so natural. It's so, like you said, it's just so charming, it's so confident, just so him.
Yeah.
And that warmth, like you said, never really goes away.
Yeah. And there's an undercurrent of fear, which a lot of other actors, I think, would have avoided as well, right? Mm-hmm. Because we can feel Chuck being strong for Wilson.
Yeah.
Right? Like almost that he's playing that and playing through his fear by making sure Wilson knows he's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which is a relationship that makes no sense.
It's almost fatherly, but it's like a best friend on a father.
Yeah, the choice to adopt this, everything's going to be okay, volleyball. He never ever has that moment where he stops and laughs at himself for talking to the ball. Like I can picture Denzel Washington doing that. I can picture Duvall doing that. There are actors who would just go, this is dumb. I have to show people that I understand it. But yeah, he commits fully to this relationship, and you can act against a blank screen, and he would still, he would compel me. He would have me in the palm of his hand as an actor.
Yeah.
And because we've experienced, I don't think I've even started to talk about the way the film is made, but that the choice to shoot the plane crash entirely from the inside.
Yeah.
And then which I didn't notice the first time. I have to admit, I was so caught up in it that it wasn't until the second viewing, it's like, oh my God, we never leave the plane.
No.
Gravity is changing, and it's obviously all on a green screen set and a gimbal and everything, but he does not condescend to the acting at all.
No.
Like, he is utterly terrified, trying to be competent, and it's an early sign of how he's going to handle everything else, obviously, but it's a focused physical performance that's also somehow profoundly emotional, even though he's doing what everybody would do, which is just panic and try not to die.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah.
Well, it's incredibly horrific, and even the ability of the actors playing the pilots and the flight attendants. Like, I really would love to talk to someone who has been in a situation like that and has come out and survived, how real that was. Because watching that, your hands just get sweaty and your feet get sweaty, and you're just like, it just is so well done. And that look he has as he's seeing the very subtle look of the water bouncing around right before it hits. It again, like you said, it's just so well done. That's cinematography, and that's the sounds that everything is going on. It's really incredible to watch that executed so well.
Yeah. Have you seen it theatrically, or only caught up to it on?
Only I see. I watched. I only because I was 10 at the time, so I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I remember, because I grew up on. It's funny that you said Denzel Washington, because I was thinking to myself, because with Castaway, I grew up on Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, and Ron Williams.
Okay.
Those were like my four, just growing up at a very early age, of like actors that I was like, oh, they're so good. Oh my God, they're so cool. And just because of their range and how they're able to transform into different genres. But
and all like
sorry, I went on a little tangent.
No.
But
the proper 90s movie stars, right? Like, they all became themselves. They became that thing in the course of that decade.
Yes.
Like, Washington's coming off of Glory, and Roberts is Pretty Woman. Like, the early Hanks had Big, but he hadn't really done a drama yet. And then 1990 comes along, and everybody and Williams, I guess, was already doing Good Morning Vietnam and things like that.
Yes.
But they all sort of clarified and worked to the commercial cinema of the time. Mm-hmm. And they all have regrettable stuff, and they all have amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And this for Hanks is sort of like putting a pin in that. This is his last leading man kind of role for a while.
For a little while,
and then he pursued character stuff.
But he also he always took a supporting role with humility and with pride. Mm. It never seemed like he was a person that was like, oh, I gotta be a leading man. I gotta be the lead. He's like, no, he's like, this is a great character. It's a great script. I'm gonna do it. Even though it was blockbuster and it was Hollywood, he's just that lovable, like you said, there's that lovable person that you hope other actors will be, or hope to become, and not get warmed up in all the other messes. Yeah,
I think he's one of those people who everybody seems to have this concept of him, just because I realize now he's been around as an acting force for a long, long time. Like, early 80s, he was doing sitcom appearances. Yep. And everyone forgets. It's like Clooney. You put in the years before you become famous, and you're probably going to be okay. Yeah. Like, meteorically famous, like Hollywood super A-list famous.
Right.
Hanks was like Bosom Buddies was one thing, but then he had those 2 episodes of Family Ties, or 3 episodes where he just showed up. Like, I was a kid then, and I still took notice. And it's like, this guy's fantastic. Where did he come from? Yeah. Why can't he have his own thing?
Yeah.
And you can just feel it. Yeah. The talent is there. And then I think the thing that saved him ultimately from just being the bachelor party comedy guy was that he could say no. And he, after doing a bunch of really broad comedies, just decided he could do other things.
Yeah.
And he just stopped making those comedies.
Yeah.
Like, dead stop after Big. He just was not interested in them. I mean, there's Dragnet the same year maybe, or that was 87. But I think that was the last time he went like goofball Tom Hanks. And then he just started chasing stuff that mattered to him.
Yeah.
And so, this thing comes along, and it's like, well, it's just going to be you. Are you okay with that? Mm-hmm. And I think he had the confidence to say yes, but he also figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
For himself, like, before any of the filmmaking came in. He developed it too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think he was part of the writing. I know it was Burles.
William Burles, who wrote Apollo 13, or who was one of the writers on it.
That's right.
And who was definitely like a friend of Hanks before Zemeckis got involved.
Right.
I think that was it. I think I don't know that I've actually read an interview with him about this specifically, but he did talk about the idea of isolation and survival, what happens when you're removed from everything. And he talked about it in elemental terms.
Right.
If you don't have water, fire, what was it? Water, fire, tools, or companionship, I think was how he explained it. And
cool.
That was what he wanted to investigate. And it's that's all there. He invents all the, he figures out a way to make fire. He has some water, but the tools and the companionship are invented by him, basically. He builds them while we watch, the relationship with Wilson and the spear and things like that.
Right.
And it's all through his head. I mean, I think I would have been okay if he never found Wilson and didn't talk. I would watch that silent film.
Yeah.
Because he would make it interesting.
But it would have, and then that would have been a completely different film.
Yeah.
Because it added such a great buddy comedy aspect to it that you don't expect.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I love it, is because there's so many, like when he gets the coral in the leg, and when he finds the dead body and little things like that could turn the film in a completely different way. Or if they had one of the other flight attendants or the pilots live.
Sure.
Let's say it's just two of them. It'd be a completely different film. And I like that they just kept it going where it could have turned into a horror. It could have turned into like a very, very serious drama. But then there's always that little bit of light that keeps it going. That Tom Hanks warmth that keeps going and keeps going. And
yeah.
Awesome.
I think about to me, the most moving scene is the moment where the camera sort of catches his test for suicide.
Yeah.
Which is, again, he kind of laughs it off to Wilson, which is such a fascinating, sad choice. Because, it's the indication, obviously, right? If you try to be sad, then you should try to play the opposite so people can see the real emotion leak through. Right. But he's just so... It's the engineering aspect of it. Good thing I didn't try that. And it's like, yeah, good. That's probably what I would have done in day 2. So yeah, good thing you didn't try that.
Yeah.
But the identification with that moment where, oh, that's right. If you're going to try to kill yourself, you should probably make sure it'll work, because that's far worse. And that's that thing he knows, right? Like the thing he's learned is that if you're going to do this, you don't want to just lie around with broken legs, because that's a far worse death. And so he just ruled it out because he went through the calculations. He did the work.
And that's the basis of the character. He never lost that arc, never left, because the basis, the feet of the character they never left. And like even that moment when he's talking to Wilson and he's saying, he's okay, yeah, you were right. Yeah, I know. Okay, I know it didn't work, but I had to try. And like you were saying, that's just good work. Yeah. It's good work, and it's also great directing. Because sometimes, depending on, and again, when you have a bigger budget, there's more time. But for you to keep that character consistent and to keep the basis of him throughout the entire film, as he's slowly going insane, as he's being horribly hurt, like how he didn't die from infection, I'll never know, or a horrible sinus infection.
I just assume salt water. I think he just kind of left his leg in the water the whole time. Yeah, it kind of comes up in Harpoon, too. It's one way to treat a wound.
It is.
Although it's not a very good one.
No, it's not. Yeah, and the seagull blood's definitely not a way to go. We should have definitely gone for some fish.
Yeah. Who has time?
Who has time to go look for the fish?
The seagulls are right there.
Yeah, exactly, with a rock. Or no, golf ball. But yeah, no, it's just a good, and I also like the ending of it, how it makes you feel, like that monologue that he has while he's talking after he's lost Helen, or Carrie, sorry. He's lost Carrie, and he knows he's not going for it because, trying to take her away from her new husband or her new life. He's like, I know this. Like he's just such an amazing guy. He goes, no, I know this. But he's like, now I just need to breathe, because that's what I was doing before. And it kind of teaches you a little life moment that when life's in session, you just got to breathe. And I think it's an important film then, but like when I was a kid, but now as I'm reaching more adulthood, it really spoke to me of just, when life is truly there and it's going to hit you hard, you just got to breathe through it. And you don't have to be on an island remote trying to find fire and make your own food. It's just like, no, just breathe through it. You're going to be okay. And just try to keep the same charm as Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely help. Yeah. Being able to roll with things.
If everyone had that demeanor and that kindness, I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah. And we don't need to be marooned to learn these lessons. But
no.
It is the sort of thing where yeah, I mean, again, the film just sort of luxuriates in the philosophical aspect in the second half just because there's nothing else to do. There's no, like, there really is no big drama after he escapes. To the point where Zemeckis, who has this weird thing about spoiling his own movies in the trailers, like, he really believes that it doesn't matter if he puts the finale in the trailers.
And I don't agree with that at all.
No, me neither.
It bothers me to my core when I watch a movie. I'm like, oh, well, now you ruined it for me. You ruined me a film that I was I want to get that surprise.
Yeah,
why would they do that?
I avoid everything just because I don't want the image in my head of whatever might be happening when I'm seeing the film. It's like, oh well, nothing's going to happen. This guy, I've seen him jump off a hat, hat stand. That hasn't happened yet, so everything's fine.
Well, I haven't had the chance to watch Joker yet, and I'm trying my best to know.
Well, he does become the Joker. Spoiler. It's not called Arthur.
Norm? I was having a really good time.
Arthur is a different film.
All of a sudden, I can't watch it.
I actually want to come up with fake spoilers for that.
Fake spoilers?
Yeah.
That's
well, it turns out it's really the Penguin. Didn't see that coming,
exactly.
did you?
But I mean just little things, like with the,
Oh, yeah.
You just don't want to, everything, like not even the spoiler of how it ends or certain turns or twists, just giving you too much. Climactic moments.
Yeah.
Moments that will jump you out of your seat, keep you on your toes, and be like, oh, that was so cool. Get you that first experience in theaters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have been in movie theaters and seen trailers and just been stuck with them rather than being able to just avoid them.
Yeah.
And I'm always really happy when I see a movie and it's like, oh, this was all from the first 15 minutes. Nice, clever, okay, good. Because you can just gear out and watch the film.
100%.
Yeah.
That is the best. That is the best thing to do. The other worst part, it's not people spoiling their films through their trailers, but is when their trailers are way better than their films.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's been a couple that I think, what was the one? Killing Him Softly?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I didn't not like the movie. I was like, okay, it's fine. The trailer for me just lifted it up. I was like, oh, this is going to be just so epic. Here we go. Let's bring out the noms. And I watched it. I was like, okay. Yeah. But the trailer kind of overhyped it for me.
Well, it's because the trailer doesn't spend 2 hours telling you all about the subtext, right?
Exactly.
Like you get the impression of the film, which is often a lot better. Like with Castaway, I don't know if it's that much of a. I would have fought against it, but I don't know that it really hurts the film to show us that he gets off the island. Because I've really been thinking about this. It's called Castaway. You're not going to send people out. Like, Robert Zemeckis is not going to make a movie where Tom Hanks dies on an island.
No.
I kept thinking that while I was watching it before. I didn't know about the trailers when I saw it. I saw it early enough that I think the final trailer hadn't even come out yet. And then subsequently I saw it in the theater and went, really? Like, out loud. And felt bad for people who were sitting with me. Because I wouldn't have told anybody.
No.
But ultimately, I think in this case, maybe not in so many of the other ones, like I wouldn't have blown What Lies Beneath the way he did. With the trailer. But I think as far as Castaway goes, there's something to be said for it really isn't about the destination. It really is about the journey. Like, it is about watching this guy figure out who he is after he comes back.
Yeah.
And so there's another movie where it opens with him coming back. I mean, it wouldn't work. You have to see it.
Yeah.
But, there could be a mumblecore film about someone being reacclimated to society and figuring out who he is after some kind of massive removal.
Yeah.
And I would watch that, especially if it was Tom Hanks.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it'd be fun to see that flipped.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing. It's there's so many remakes happening. I think you could remake this, and I hope they don't.
No one should.
Leave it alone, please. If you're listening, please.
Well, and now I don't know that anyone would believe any of it, right? Because everything with CG now. Robert Downey Jr. being emaciated at the beginning of Avengers Endgame,
right.
And it's a great subtle effect. You only see it 2 or 3 times, but it's really well done. It's also there's no way that's real.
No.
And so at no point in the film did my brain go, oh wow. It was just like, oh, cool effect.
Yeah.
And so there's something tactile, really, really real about watching it in this movie and knowing that it's Fiji. There's a crew. He's fine. But all of this is physically present, and he's interacting with all of this stuff, and it is helping his performance. I think it really does, like the verisimilitude of the film's construction makes me buy into everything. And I know he went home at night to a hotel, and like he's not living on the beach. Everything's fine. But it's so much easier to plug into the reality of a film where, you know, the sand is in the camera and it's real and it's all just there. And yeah, how would you even approach, what would be the point of doing it now, especially after this virtuoso performance that is captured on film?
It's true.
Yeah.
Why? Because
someone will think it's a good
Because someone will think it's good.
It's IP.
Yeah.
Recognizable IP. That's
exactly.
why.
But it's so true. I really love what they're doing with CG. I love it. Mm-hmm. But there is that little bit that's missing. That you know, you can see the sand on his face and walking over, picking up the FedEx boxes. And there was a moment where, at the very beginning, when he is at shore and he's sitting there looking at his beeper and he's taking the water out of it. And the water keeps coming in and out. And my thought kept going, oh, is it going to take the boat away? Is it just going to start slowly taking the boat away and he's just going to be facing off, not even seeing it? And I was like, my whole thought was like, how did they get the water to come up there so perfectly? Was there a guy pushing the water? And it was, of course not. It's just the way it worked out.
Zemeckis, I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah.
He might have actually had a guy with like a big rectangular fan or something.
20 men just
moving the tide.
That's right. Exactly.
You know, they did it in the 60s in some Sword and Sandal movie. It must have happened.
God, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, you also, apparently they had to re-record all the dialogue because of the surf. It's almost all ADR because of that.
Really?
Yeah, the noise just never stopped.
I'm not shocked. That would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
I wonder if Tom Hanks did it.
Oh, he must have.
If he did all of his own ADR. Because I've heard stories about people not doing their own ADR.
Really? Just for timing?
I think
scheduling and stuff like that?
Scheduling, timing, and they have... I've heard stories of like voice actors coming in and imitating the actor to do
There's
ADR.
no way Tom Hanks would let anybody else. Not for this
I don't think so.
think.
I don't think so. But that's a lot of footage, a lot of ADR. But hey, you know, they fooled me.
Yeah.
If that's true.
I did not know about it until I looked up the trivia stuff.
I was looking at I didn't see that on trivia. That's why.
Yeah, it's on the IMDb page somewhere.
Yeah.
And again, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It might not be true, but it's probably on the commentary track. I should listen to the commentary again.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said. Everything came together the right way. All the pieces landed, and it is like it's as much of a double act as a film can be between the director and the star. It really, like, it's Zemeckis trusting Hanks to get it all there emotionally, and Hanks trusting Zemeckis to get the right takes and make the CG work.
And also just to keep the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's like you can tell, and because they've worked together, you know, after that, it's like you can tell it's a partnership that they trust, and that's, I think, it's not rare, but when you find something that good, especially with people that highly respected, you make magic.
Yeah, I wonder what it was like on Polar Express.
Polar Express,
yeah, because it is. I mean,
well, it's
for whatever it is, and it's weird.
Yeah,
Hanks is acting like he's not phoning it in. He's doing whatever is required.
Yeah,
and playing multiple characters, including one of the kids. And it's just like, how do you even go from something as demanding physically as Castaway to motion cap pajamas and, you know, and this thing that you're also Santa. Like,
yeah.
Do whatever you need to do.
I just don't think there's anything you can't do.
I wonder, yeah.
Like with even Cloud Atlas, when they did many, many different things, which is a totally different topic.
Yeah,
but even certain things with that, I was like, okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, it's true. He's not giving himself a safe space to kind of be, you know, like, he's not giving himself a way out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's the same thing with the laughing at Wilson that he doesn't do.
Right.
It's like he deprives himself of the escape hatch by fully committing. And yeah, Cloud Atlas, just even that, there's so much wrong with that film. Yeah. But everyone believes it so fervently.
Right.
And I kind of want to look at it again now, however many years later, 5 or 6 years later, just to see if it was just the moment that didn't work, if it was weird if it didn't land because I was just in the wrong headspace.
Right.
It's one of those films that I don't think I'm wrong.
Right.
But it pulls at me just enough. It's like, well, the next time I have 3 hours free, maybe.
See, I watched it, and I thought I was like, interesting, courageous.
Sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I was like, the one time, and it's fine. And that's not a slight. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't come out of it being like, what a bad film. I was kind of like, it had me think, it was like, what were their intentions then? Mm-hmm. What was their main goal for the execution?
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And does that make a good film or a bad film? up to your own discretion.
I guess for me, the fascination now is that now that both Wachowskis have come out as trans and completely embraced a new identity, this film about people living multiple lives and different identities is obviously some kind of Rosetta Stone. Like in my brain, it has to make some sort of sense now in light of those choices. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know if that's true, and that's what fascinates me.
Right.
I must return. I must go back.
Yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing about films like that, I think, because even though, if you can make you think, like, I like films that you just watch them, they're good. And watch films that are like, oh, it makes you feel a specific emotion, and done. But when you can watch something and go, no, I've really got to think about it, and it keeps me thinking, and then me and my girlfriend and me and my friends are out, and we're still talking about it, being like, I still think that's really, really good. Like we were talking about bold choices with films, whether it's the writing, the directing, the performance. Like Nicolas Cage is perfect for that. Yeah, he makes bold choices all the time, and people love him, and then some people hate him.
Yeah.
But he's got the courage enough to make those choices, and so that's interesting, and that's art.
Yeah.
It makes you think, makes you talk.
I think it comes down to how he's. It doesn't happen the same way with Hanks because he's such a conventional performer, right? But with Cage, when you have a director who knows how to frame him so that he is like, Cage works so much better in close-ups than in long shots, because in long shots he looks like an animal. He's moving in a weird way. It's like the camera's trying to keep up with him, and I think that creates a dislocation in the viewer, right? Because you're just trying to. Is this rehearsal? Like, what am I seeing? But when you see his face, when it's close up, you totally plug in. I think like that's the difference between Leaving Las Vegas and Bad Lieutenant, which Bad Lieutenant's a great performance, but the film has a much more arch perspective. And Leaving Las Vegas, all you get from him is that sadness and that misery, and it's because you're watching his face disintegrate.
Right. I think that's interesting you bring up the close-up into the wides, because if I'm thinking about it now with Hanks, most of his films have been wides and mid shots.
Yeah.
And because there is that, he has such a cementing physicalness to him.
Yeah, he's like a lodestone. He pulls the focus somehow.
And he has amazing physical comedy. And he's got amazing physical performances when it comes to pain, torture, and emotion. But that's interesting. And that, like, I never thought about that for Nicolas Cage, for him to be like, okay, maybe put, or even actors in general, be like, okay, if you just put them in films where it's just close-ups, you'll see them in a different light. Yeah. Or in a mid or wide. I never thought about that. That's interesting.
It struck me a while back with Cage just because I was watching, maybe it was Bad Lieutenant, where it was just like all the other actors are sort of getting out of his way in one shot where he rambles through a bar, and you can just sort of feel people moving and there's an uncomfortable energy. And it's Werner Herzog. He just wants it to be weird.
Right.
And off-putting, because the character is weird and off-putting, and the film is about that. But I got the sense all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is like and it's a deep cut, but it's the trick that Dean Cundey came up with for Jurassic Park. That Spielberg and Dean Cundey moved the camera about 3 frames after the dinosaurs, because that way some part of our unconscious would think about wildlife documentaries where they're trying to follow a creature that hasn't rehearsed.
That's so smart.
It's ingenious.
Wow.
And you can tell which movies do it and which movies don't.
Right.
And then I started thinking about Cage in relation to that, and it's like, yeah, he does. He's moving like an animal that no one understands. Like, people don't want to look him in the eye, the character, because he's so manic.
Right.
But with Hanks, you get this, even when he's in a broad comedy role, like he's playing that for us.
Yeah.
He's like in Pep Strebeck in Dragnet, or the Man with One Red Shoe, where he's sort of breaking the fourth wall without doing it, just letting us know how manic and how agitated he is.
But his emotion just transcends.
Yeah.
It's like
he's
Turner
acting.
and Hooch, when his anxiety and his frustration. I love the moment when he's there making eggs and he has to go because he's figured it out, and he starts clamming on the pans.
Yeah.
And those little moments with the dog even. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Everything is but that's purposeful, right?
Right. And it's telling us that it's a movie, right? That it's movie acting, it's cinematic, but everybody else in the shot is okay with it. Like it's been rehearsed, it's been practiced. Steve Martin kind of has the same effect.
Yes.
And they're both really tall, which is something that surprised me, that Steve Martin and Tom Hanks are taller than you think they're going to be, and they're both built. Like they're really
strong,
physically, solid looking guys.
Yeah.
Like Hanks comes off as a string bean a lot in the 80s, but
right.
In 1994, he was surprisingly solid and taller than I thought he was going to be. And same for Steve Martin, actually. Steve Martin's a dancer. He's built like a linebacker, but he's a
Right.
dancer. And it's this weird contradiction.
I found that out through Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. That
Oh,
he's a
yeah.
dancer. And I was like, but it makes total sense though. And that's somebody told me recently that if you've danced before, that makes you a better actor.
I can believe it.
Just because of
Like
understanding
total physical awareness, right?
That's it, 100%. And the same thing with apparently singing. If you sing before and then you become an actor, there is something. If you're a good singer, it through emotion, and that's the same thing with theater and stuff like that, and understanding certain intentions there. But I totally believe that. I wonder if Hanks has ever done anything like on that physical realm.
I bet he's danced. I'm just trying to think, has he ever done it in a film that isn't like a ballroom dance sequence where it's just...
Or big on the piano.
Yeah, of course, there it is.
Yeah.
That kind of physicality.
Yeah, he has... And that you see that with this comedy. So like you can have... Yeah, it's very interesting.
Huh. Yeah, now I'm just thinking through my head and like flipping through the Rolodex of Tom Hanks performances. But yeah, no, and the opera scene in Philadelphia too. There's that graceful thing he does with his arms and the way he moves and holds the IV stand. It's
No, he has that.
He's danced. He's a dancer.
He's a dancer.
We'll find footage.
We'll find footage.
It must
of
be a
him
Saturday
dancing.
Night Live sketch where he's done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's all in the service in Castaway. All this physicality is in the service of like despair and sadness, and when you watch him start to light up for the escape, when all of that's starting to come together, and I think the score finally comes in after a long period of silence.
I wanted to bring that up. That's another reason why I love the film is that there's no score. Because I love one of the two. I love when the score just brings out all these emotions for me, or there's nothing. It's like No Country for Old Men, just nothing. And you just that's why I love when he's just standing there and it's a super wide shot, but you feel everything. But there's no music.
Yeah.
Usually the music will tell you, okay, this is how you're going to feel, this is the crescendo, and this is going to come up and it's going to stop.
Yeah, and Zemeckis especially uses music. I mean, the Back to the Future score is one of the great ones. But Romancing the Stone, like all of his early work is really, really driven by score.
That's right.
And to throw that away here is also kind of daring.
It's just a daring film. It's just that's why it's just so good. and then again, it just makes you think. It's just brilliant. But yeah, that when those little moments come in with the music, it's usually moments of freedom. When you think maybe his mind is, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Or like little moments of peace in his head where you can tell at the very beginning and as it keeps going, he's always constantly running. The machine keeps going and he's always trying to control everything and make everything perfect and, micromanage everything. And then there's those little moments that just... And then maybe that was intentional. It has to be intentional.
It's got to be, yeah.
Because there's only 3 moments when the music comes in. But it's perfectly placed.
There are no accidents in a Robert Zemeckis film.
No, there's
Although,
not.
I can't say that about Welcome to Marwen. I don't know if you've seen Welcome to Marwen, the last one, the one with Steve Carell. It's a remake kind of Marwen Call, this amazing documentary. Well, he made a movie about Mark Hogenkamp.
It was one with he got assaulted, and then he starts taking
Polaroids
fingerings.
of actors, taking Polaroids of Barbie dolls and G.I. Joes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've seen the trailer countless times.
Do not watch that film.
No,
do not watch that.
I was
watch the documentary Marwen Call. It's incredible.
Okay.
Do not watch the Robert Zemeckis movie. It's horrible.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
It's just
I was all excited because with Zemeckis, with Steve Carell has those qualities.
Yeah.
Kind of like Tom Hanks.
I would have thought.
But no, eh?
No, it's just a complete misunderstanding of the material. It betrays Hogenkamp in a way that's really unfortunate and yeah, it's.
Well, I'm still gonna watch it.
I know. I can see it in your eyes now. It's like
I have to.
You must be mistaken.
No, see, I love when someone tells me they don't like a film. It's brilliant. It's the same thing when people say I've never seen that film. I've heard so many people when say I haven't seen that film. They go, "Oh, how can you never seen that film? How is that possible?" My first mindset goes, "Oh, you're so lucky."
Yeah, you get to see it for the first time. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's where when people say I don't like that film, I'm like, oh. I gotta watch because I get excited when people say they don't like a film. When people say they love the film, it just depletes me.
Great enthusiasm doesn't do it for you. It's hatred.
It's the other one. I don't know why that works for me. I'm just like, because if it gets high praise, I'm like, okay, you're leaving it up because I want to have my own experience with it, of course. But when someone says, oh, it's just so bad, it's just such a horrible film, I'm like, ooh. ooh, like why? But also, am I gonna love this?
You are not. No.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know what I think.
Yeah, I think I might still have the Blu-ray. You're welcome to borrow it, but
absolutely,
do not spend money. Oh, yeah, I think I know I still have the Blu-ray because I'm fascinated by it. It is not a good film. Castaway is a good film. That's good. If Robert Zemeckis has a legacy, don't let it be this. I want him to make one more movie, even if it's the CG Yellow Submarine. Just get past this thing. Show me you still have it.
Show me, yeah. I wanted to do that now, just so he can have. Maybe he'll just do in third time's a charm. He'll go for 2 really bold ones.
Oh, I root for him.
But it's not even bold because you said the documentary was great.
It is.
So it has a foundation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it does not respect it.
What is it? I don't want to.
We just talked about spoilers, right?
I know, but now I'm so intrigued. I want to ask you about it.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, that's great.
You know what? You're welcome to watch it, and you want to come back and do an episode on that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
It just seems me being
I'll watch the documentary. You get me all excited.
The documentary is amazing. I think it's on iTunes still. Mongrel released it in Canada. Okay. It was definitely released theatrically here, and there is a DVD of it because my review is on it, and that's very nice. But, oh, yeah. No.
Okay, you know what? If I watch it and I don't like it, I'll send you a little message.
This is the worst.
You know what, Norm?
I don't want you to go through it.
I agree.
This is the worst game of chicken I've ever played. I don't want you to do this.
If I like it, we're coming on. Let's have a debate. If I just love it.
Oh, God.
I'll love it just for spite. No.
I apologize in advance to anyone. No. If that happens, this is the darkest timeline. I don't want you to have to suffer through
timeline.
It. Oh, it's 2 hours long.
It was only one time.
So bad. Okay. But I'm trying to figure out how to connect this back to it. The final question on the podcast is always the same, which is there anything from Castaway that you personally have lifted, borrowed, been inspired by, stolen, outright incorporated into your creative DNA? Is there something that you use from the film? It seems so singular. It's such a weird question in this case. Absolutely.
I think, and it's one of the reasons why I chose it, is because it holds 2 pieces of inspiration that hold dear to me. So Tom Hanks is one of the actors I grew up idolizing. Him, like I said, Denzel, Julia Roberts, and Robin Williams. And the other aspect is what the film is, which is many different genres. So when I watch it, I laugh, I want to cry, I feel nostalgia, I cringe, I feel horror. And I always grew up idolizing these actors because I loved how much range they had. And I never really wanted to be something in my mind of an actor who was just one note. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to try to see how many genres could I touch, how many characters could I create believable, and make them believable. And I think that's where Tom Hanks does that, where he has so many amazing, earnest moments, and he could literally do nothing but make it entertaining. Watching him do Big, and then Castaway, Robin Williams doing Mrs. Doubtfire and The Fisher King.
Sure.
So I love those films, and I also it allows me to watch and be like, I hope one day I could do something that courageous, where it's literally you're stripped of everything, music, props, most props, and like big set decks, and just try to make something interesting out of it and try to make it entertaining.
So it's just you and the camera.
Yeah. And that's kind of it. I think that'd be fun, like a one man play. You're not because I think that's terrifying, and it's scary, and I think that's exciting. Yeah. There's so many roles that will terrify you and will make you shy away. And I've always been told from my father and from my people close to me growing up in the industry is like, never let fear stop you. Fear in life is good if you use it as a tool, but don't let fear ever make a decision for you. So if there's something that scares you, jump at it.
Yeah. Is that what Harpoon was? The idea of just 3 people in one location?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
Yeah, that was fun because of, well, you have to watch the film, but there's so many, there's a cool turn that happens.
Well, I was going to say, you do get to play every genre in this, basically. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's a spoiler to just say it's not what it appears, the film is not what it appears to be. It goes all over the place, and it's
all over the place.
It's a blast for that. I really enjoyed that.
Well, and Brett Gelman kind of sets the tone for that. So when you hear that he's the narrator, you're like, oh, okay, so where are we going? But then you see all the gore and the thrill of it, and that's why I was like, okay, let's go after it. Because I've done a few things in the last couple of years where I've played the main antagonist, where he's the stalker killer or he's the head of the cult. But this one was just different, and it was different. It was weird, and it was, again, just us three.
Yeah.
And it was for you to have just you three isolated, nowhere to run. Let's see if we can make it entertaining. Let's see if we can make it entertaining, make it consistent, make it interesting, and hopefully people watch it and like it. And that's always a blast.
Yeah, I really enjoy the idea of a film where you don't really necessarily get to root for anybody. They're all kind of awful, but they're the only people we have, so what's going to happen?
Let's see where they go. And that's Rob's intention with it. Rob's like, not everybody's perfect. Yeah. We all have to accept that. You think you're, like, we're not all Tom Hanks. But, you know, these people are not good people. But at one point or another in the film, you're rooting for one of them, and you're hating the other one. And they kind of all...
Well, it's like swiveling plates, right? Like, you just keep recombining the alliances and the allegiances, and, like, do I like this person now? Is this person worse? What's going on in this moment? And that was really fun.
Good.
I like what Rob Grant does with genre, which is just refuse to be any one thing.
Yeah.
Fake Blood, which is kind of a documentary right up until it isn't, and then...
See, I was so convinced it was a documentary at first. I was like, oh, interesting. Like, at first I was like, no, it's turned into a film, and that's actually where I first met him face to face, because he had edited Knuckleball.
Right.
And I knew that, but when I watched the film, I was like, oh, interesting. And then we actually got to talk, and then he's like, yeah, I edited Knuckleball. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. We didn't clue in, but he doesn't like doing the norm, and he doesn't like doing things that are plain Jane cookie cutter, and you see that in Knuckleball, and that's where it's a challenge and which is a joy for Chris and Emily and myself, right. Where we're like, now we get to really play with different genres and, for lack of a better term, flex what we've been working on.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
our whole career.
It's an actor's piece. It's great. That was the thing that I was surprised by, because all I got was the link and the title, and then I saw the poster, which is like, even then I'm depriving myself of further information. Other than this is Rob Grant's new movie, I can't wait.
Right.
And it is not, like, it is an actor's showpiece. There is nothing but you guys and a set. And it's, more. I want more of those. Those are fun.
That's it. And see, that kind of reaction is what we're hoping for. Like, thank you so much for that. But
no, I just wish I could have seen it with an audience. It must be a really different experience with 300 people.
Well, that's what's really, really fun. We had that in Fantasia with the, with the audience there. The audience there is always amazing. But, if you do want to go see it at the Carlton right now, it'll be here probably for another week. It's really good in the audience. Again, everything is always better on the big screen, but if you get the chance.
Yeah, I recommend that too. Don't wait for the VOD. You should see this with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you only got to see the screener.
Yeah, I mean, I projected it. I watched it in the garage, so it's
cool.
a 120-inch screen.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah. 2K projector. It's okay. But I was just like, that's messy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was messy in negative 30 Calgary studio. We had heaters literally on in the studio because they had built this incredible lower deck, and it just worked where we got the yacht, like, I think it was a week before we got to Belize. Mm-hmm. And
the idea that you shot this in Belize and Calgary.
Yeah.
And it's the same location, and like matching to be the same place is kind of wonderful.
Yeah. No, and it literally worked perfectly. There was a big gamble there where the yacht maybe wouldn't look like there was going to be certain windows that we had played it, because we shot in Calgary first. So we were all really interested to say, how is this going to work? And they did amazing stuff with the lighting to make the reflection of the water on the roof. Mm-hmm. I remember that specifically for Emily, Chris, and myself. We were like, okay, now we feel we're here. Now we feel we're in the boat. Before that, it was okay, it's cold, and we're all covered in blood, and except for Emily. Emily wasn't as covered in blood, but she had enough to deal with it. Yeah. And the mass craziness of Chris and myself throughout it. But, that really, it was just amazing work that they did to create that. And then the fact that we were able to make it look proper with the yacht that they got. You don't ask questions with those. You're just like thankful that it worked out and move on. But
yeah,
it was cool.
The low budget alchemy.
Yeah.
Of a genre picture.
Yeah.
Plus, we have suspension of disbelief. We're in. Like, by the time it becomes an issue, I think I was already on board. As long as there wasn't like a horrible blue screen shot, I would never have noticed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's you know what you're getting into with the lower budget indie films, and that's why it's kind of fun to see Castaway.
Yeah.
And also like how they did that in Fiji. Like, other than the the main plane crash that they obviously did in studio, which I'd love to see how they did that. I'd love to see like a BTS
like a previs of some
camera.
sort.
Yeah, something how they did that. But you have to figure it out for yourself, and you have to cheat angles all the time. Like we had the yacht on a dock, and we just cheated it every single time. When you're in Fiji and you're on an island, you kind of have, but again, he didn't really go places. Like he said, I've looked all over the island looking for rope, and this is what's left. But they don't show
We
that,
don't see it, no.
which I think is wonderful, because they didn't actually have him going through the jungle or whatever it would be in the mountainous region of the island.
Yeah.
They just had him in 3 places. It was under his tent, it was on the rock, in the water, or in the cave.
Yeah, and it really feels more isolated that way, right? We get a sense of how big the island is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he doesn't venture makes it, 5 years later, it hits home so much more that this is what he settled on, because either everything else is too dangerous or there's just nothing.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel more desolate somehow, just by being alone with Tom Hanks in one spot.
Well, and that's exactly, and that's where I think Harpoon is interesting and a little claustrophobic, because although we go out onto the top of the dock and you see the water, but all of it's mainly just in the cabin.
Yeah.
And so that adds another level of anxiety, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, I think it works. I can't wait to see how people respond to it. It's not what you think it's going to be, folks. That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
My thanks to Munro Chambers, who you can catch in Harpoon this week at the Carlton Cinema if you're in Toronto, just like he said. It's also available on iTunes, but, if you can, you should see it in the theater. And check out Munro in Riot Girls, directed by friend of the show Jovanka Vuckovic. It's on VOD right now as well. You can find Munro on Twitter at @_Munro, and you can find Castaway on Blu-ray and DVD from 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you feel like leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you enjoy the show, that would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network. They're pretty good. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening. See you next week. Please don't watch Welcome to Marwen.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.